Rich Franklin is one of the most underrated UFC champions of all time. The American fighter was a high school math teacher before he went full-time with his MMA career. His superb striking and solid ground game made him one of the most dangerous fighters at middleweight and light heavyweight. But it was at 185 where Rich found the most success, as he became the UFC middleweight champion and defended that belt 2 times. He had it all, and it really seemed like he'd be holding onto that belt for a very long time. But then he lost the championship, and although he remained as a top name afterwards, he never became champion again. So how good was Rich Franklin actually? Hey guys, it's Kiiyon, and today I'm going to be talking about Rich Ace Franklin. So many of you have been asking for this one, so here it finally is. And I'll be honest, I think this video took so long because I too was one of those people who forgot how great Rich Franklin was. His career tends to be overshadowed by Anderson Silva, who not only beat him, but also dominated the division for years. But before Anderson Silva, there was Rich Franklin. And to be honest, I feel like he was the first popular UFC middleweight champion. The first fighter to bring excitement to the division, which still carries on to this day. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Rich's MMA career to really understand how good he was. But first, shout out to the undisputed members of my Patreon. They get the extra perk of a shout out before each video. But even the intro members get early access and video to the Kiiyon Kimura podcast. And as always, the money goes to charity. Now let's get to it. Rich began his MMA career on June 19th, 1999 at the age of 24. After winning his first 3 fights, he fought Gary Myers. For most of the time, both men were in the clinch, trading shots, and would separate occasionally before going back in. It wasn't very eventful until in round 3 when Rich connected with a head kick that knocked Gary out. A month later, Rich fought Dennis Reed. Dennis secured the takedown right away, but while off his back, Rich locked up an armbar that forced a tap. Following this win, he fought for the IFS Light Heavyweight United States Championship. His opponent was Aaron Bink. This fight quickly became a war as both men connected with some brutal shots. Unfortunately, Aaron's foot got caught between the cage and the floor during a takedown attempt. With his foot now injured, the fight was stopped and ruled as a no contest. 2 months later, Rich fought Travis Fulton. This was a back and forth grappling battle as both men had their moments on the ground. But Rich was definitely more effective as he threw ground and pound and attempted submissions. By the end of round 1, Travis's corner threw in the towel. Rich picked up 4 more wins before fighting Anthony Ria. Anthony looked good early as he denied the takedown attempts and began to connect with big shots that hurt Rich. But Rich was able to clinch up and catch his breath before unleashing punches of his own that forced referee Matt Hughes to step in. After this win, Rich made his debut with the UFC. So at UFC 42, he fought Evan Tanner. And Rich looked good as he outstruck Evan on the feet, which led to the first round finish. He picked up another win before fighting Edwin DeWeese at UFC 44. Rich threw everything at Edwin before knocking him down and finishing him with ground and pound. 3 months later, Rich fought Lyoto Machida. For the entire fight, Lyoto was the aggressor with his striking and grappling. Rich was unable to keep up with his pace, and in round 2, he had a head kick and punches that knocked him down, handing him his first defeat. 3 months later, Rich fought Leo Sylvestre. Leo tried to bring the fight down, but he ended up on his back where he got mounted and 8 punches that forced him to tap. Rich picked up another win before fighting Jorge Rivera at UFC 50. This was also his debut at middleweight, and he looked good as he controlled the fight everywhere it went. This led to an armbar in round 3 that forced Jorge to tap. Rich picked up a win outside of the UFC before coming back to fight former UFC Superfight champion Ken Shamrock. The fight went down at light heavyweight. Ken threw a kick but slipped, and this led to him eating ground and pound that forced referee Big John to step in. At UFC 53, Rich fought UFC middleweight champion Evan Tanner, making it their second meeting. Although Evan looked close to ending the fight in round 1 with a big right hand, Rich survived, and for the remainder of the fight, he was the aggressor on the feet. This continued into the 4th before a cut on Evan's face forced the doctors to stop the fight, making Rich the new UFC middleweight champion. This win also made him a coach on the 2nd season of The Ultimate Fighter opposite UFC welterweight champion Matt Hughes. After the show, he was set to defend his belt at UFC 56 against Nate Quarry. And it was Rich who ended the fight in round 1 with a nasty left hand that knocked Nate out cold. At UFC 58, Rich fought David Loazo. This was a 5-round fight, and although David had some moments, Rich was having many more both on the feet and on the ground. By the end, he won by unanimous decision. In his post-fight interview, Rich revealed that he broke his left hand early in the 2nd round. And at the time, this win broke the record for the most consecutive middleweight title defenses. At UFC 64, Rich fought former Cage Rage middleweight champion Anderson Silva. Anderson was way too powerful as he got a hold of Rich and threw a barrage of knees and a few kicks that ended the fight. At UFC 68, Rich fought Jason McDonald. Jason tried to bring the fight down but was unable to find much success. This led to shots on the feet and on the ground from Rich, and before the start of round 3, Jason's corner stopped the fight. At UFC 72, Rich fought Yushin Okami. For most of the fight, Rich was controlling the action on the feet and in the clinch, but in round 3 he was close to being submitted. Regardless, Rich survived and ended up winning by unanimous decision. At UFC 77, he fought for the UFC Middleweight Championship. His opponent was champion Anderson Silva, making it their second meeting. Although Rich found more success this time around, he was still getting outstruck and almost got finished at the end of round 1. So it was easy for Anderson to end it in round 2 by pressing forward with punches and knees that forced Big John to step in. At UFC 83, Rich fought Travis Lutter. Travis was dominant early on with ground and pound and an armbar attempt, but Rich survived, and in round 2 he connected with punches that finished the fight. At UFC 88, Rich went up to light heavyweight and fought Matt Hamill. This was a back and forth battle on the feet for most of the fight, but then in round 3, Matt went down from a body kick and 8 punches that forced referee Mario Yamasaki to step in. At UFC 93, Rich fought former Pride welterweight and middleweight champion Dan Henderson. It was a close fight for all 3 rounds as Dan had more success with his wrestling while Rich turned it up on the feet, but by the end it was Dan who won by split decision. At UFC 99, Rich fought former Pride middleweight champion Anderson Silva. The two went back and forth on the feet for most of the fight, and it was Rich who was finding more success. By the end, he won by unanimous decision. At UFC 103, Rich fought former UFC light heavyweight champion Vitor Belfort. Rich got dropped early in round 1 by a left hand, which led to more ground and pound that forced the ref to step in. At UFC 115, he fought former UFC light heavyweight champion Chuck Liddell. Aside from an early takedown by Chuck, the two were feeling each other out on the feet for most of round 1, until the final minute when Chuck began to press forward more, which led to him connecting with a nice head kick and a few punches. But this left him open to a counter right by Rich, which knocked him out cold. It was a nasty finish. What makes it more impressive was how Rich's forearm broke in the middle of round 1 from a kick. At UFC 126, he fought former UFC light heavyweight champion Forrest Griffin. Although Rich had some moments on the feet, he also ate some shots, and for the most part, he was also getting out grappled. After 3 rounds, Forrest won by unanimous decision. At UFC 147, Rich fought Anderson Silva, making it their second meeting. Rich looked good as he was the aggressor on the feet and on the ground, but Vanderlei was very close to finishing the fight in the second after connecting with a huge right hand. But Rich survived and won the fight by unanimous decision. 5 months later, he fought former Strikeforce middleweight champion Kung Lee. Rich ate a right hook in round 1 that knocked him out cold, and this ended up being his last MMA fight as he began to realize that his body was slowing down. Before officially retiring in September of 2015, Rich took on the role as vice president of ONE FC in April of 2014, and in 2019 the UFC inducted him into their Hall of Fame. So after going 29-7 with 1 no contest and a career that saw him become the UFC middleweight champion, how good was Rich Franklin actually? Rich is someone who tends to be forgotten due to Anderson Silva dominating the 185-pound division for years. But before Anderson, Rich was the face of the division. Prior to fighting Anderson, he had a record of 22-1 and 1 no contest. And in all of his title defenses, he looked unstoppable. A record like that is very uncommon in the early days of MMA. So it really seemed like Rich was going to remain as a champion for a very long time. After all, he excelled everywhere the fight went. His Muay Thai was violent as he did a ton of damage on the feet and in the clinch. He threw with an array of strikes every fight. Plus, he has some heavy hands and was able to put his opponent out with 1 shot. And no, he was not a world-class grappler, but he was able to control the action while on the ground if he wanted to. He had the ability to secure takedowns, his ground and pound was brutal, and he was capable of locking up submissions. He also had some good takedown and submission defense. So overall, Rich was pretty well-rounded. And combined with his size and athleticism, it was no wonder why he was so dominant early on in his career. But then he met a couple of Brazilian guys who were able to do all that he did, but in a stronger and faster manner. In fact, anyone who wasn't afraid to put the pressure on Rich would be able to find openings for the finish, especially if they had a good chin or better yet, avoided his shots. And as he got older, his body began to slow down, which made it easier for his opponents to catch him. Regardless of finishing his career with a defeat, I think he stepped away from the sport at the perfect time, especially after the most brutal knockout of his career. Rich knew he couldn't take any more of those, which is something many aging fighters fail to realize for themselves. Plus, he now has a big-time gig with an MMA promotion that is quickly growing. Despite not being recognized as the greatest middleweight of all time, he still became a UFC champion and defended that belt twice. He was also one of the most popular fighters back in the early UFC days. In fact, he was the first UFC middleweight champion to add some excitement to the division, because before he was champion, the belt was bouncing around quite a bit. So once he captured it, there was a sense of stability as many believed that he was one of the best fighters at the time. He brought much needed recognition to the UFC middleweight division. And aside from fighting at 185, he also went up to light heavyweight and found success there as well, which is very impressive, especially when we consider the resume of fighters that he fought. fought. That's why I would give his MMA career a 9 out of 10. Another reason why he doesn't get much recognition today is because he has always been such a respectful guy. He never really trash talked anyone throughout his career. He just kept his head low and did his job, which truly helped the sport of MMA grow even bigger. And even though Rich Franklin is no longer a fighter, he is still doing that today. My name is Kiiyon, and this is my take on Rich Ace Franklin. Do you agree, disagree, or have something else to add? Please put in the comments down below, because I love to read it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. But that's all for now, so I'll see you on my next one.